Christy, you're on?
Christy, can you do a sound?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Christy, can you take the roll call, please?
Sure, just give me 1 second. Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard present.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg present.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz here.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman here.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott here.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey here.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Shooters here.
Mr. Mark Butterball,
Mark Butterball's present.
Miss Sarah Fink, Mr. Caden Yanish.
Okay, I'd like to welcome the public to the board meeting as part two. I want to apologize on behalf of the board regarding the technical difficulties. There's no reason for it. And I can assure you that I will not be calling another face-to-face meeting until the administration assures me that it's fully functional and working. So as of right now, the board will remain in Zoom board meetings just because that appears to be the only way we can make this thing work. So we have two public comment sections. We have a public comment in the beginning of the board meeting that is for agenda items. And there's a public comment at the end of the meeting for non-agenda items. When, since we're all by Zoom now, when you do have a public comment, please use the raise hand feature. You'll be recognized by the meeting host and myself, and then you will be asked to speak and the board will welcome your comment. So the board will move on quickly now to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. May we now have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions on behalf of the students of the Shippensburg School District. And a moment of silence for Jeremiah Fox, who was a 2019 graduate of Shippensburg High School. He passed away on September 15th, 2020. And William Bill Enfield, who passed away on September 21st, 2020. Bill was a Shippensburg High School teacher and a basketball coach at the Shippensburg High School for 34 years before retiring in 1997. Thank you. We'll now move on to the agenda approval. But before I get to the agenda approval, on the agenda, I think it was 6B, the school reopening and health and safety plan revisions. So the administration recommended these changes based upon the return to school by the intermediate school, grades 4 and 5, including Grace B. Loers, and the eventual return to school hybrid at the middle school and high school. From what I understand, the administration isn't quite sure that we'll be able to do hybrid at the middle school while maintaining adequate 6 feet distance. At this point, the administration has made it clear to me that that is not reality yet. We don't know if we're going to be able to do that in the middle school yet or not. So since we do not have pertinent information in front of us either way, I am not willing to allow the board to vote on that measure tonight because we don't have the necessary information to vote on that. The schools, the middle school and the high school are not slated to begin hybrid until November 9th. So the board has time to watch this progress, see how many students really are planning to return to the board and return to school, which will tell us a little bit about what kind of numbers we should expect in the buildings And then we'll take a look at these changes to that part of the health and safety plan at that time. Right now, I just think that this is just too premature when we don't have the necessary information in front of us. So I know Dr. Suppo put that on the agenda because it's something that the board's going to have to consider as it moves forward in its progress to hopefully soon to eventually return our students 5 days a week in the classroom. So Dr. Suppo, given the fact that we don't have enough information to vote completely on the health and safety plan, can you just give us a summary of what we're going to do there?
Yeah, so the changes that we were referring to in the health and safety plan, many of them were really specific to the middle school and high school. Right now, our focus is on the intermediate building, which will be starting up on October 5th. So that's where the board would like to address those specific needs as opposed to the high school, middle school at this point. If you look on the plan, and this is to board members, if you look at on your agenda, item 6B, there is reference to the changes that we were having the board take a look at tonight. Again, just considering the intermediate building, we would revise that to include pages 15 and then strike pages 18 and 26. Additionally, underneath that, is information regarding level of community spread, which is based on the Pennsylvania Department of Health. And what we've done is we've revised our chart to be consistent with the Pennsylvania DOE, or excuse me, DOH. And so those changes would be what we would be reviewing tonight and ultimately voting on. That is item 6B. In addition to that, a couple of other changes to the agenda. We have item 4B, which is up for discussion tonight. This is an agenda item for outpatient services. The contract that was attached for the board was in draft. We do have that contract finalized, so there will be some slight changes we'll be uploading to the board agenda for the October 12th date, ultimately for the board to vote on. Additionally, we want to streamline our agenda because of the technical difficulties that we had this evening. So there are a couple of items I would like to move off of the agenda if the board would so agree, and we'll move those to the October 12th date. So going in order, item 3E, we had a curriculum report, a presentation from Mr. Andrew Norton regarding Keystone testing and accountability. We would like to move that to the October 12th date. And under the superintendent's report, we were going to have a presentation regarding the Blues program, which is a partnership between the SBRC and the district. We'll move that to October 12th as well. Items 4C, which it was a discussion item regarding the purchasing of a box truck. We would like to move that to the October meeting. And those are all of the changes for tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, the superintendent mentioned striking the language changes on page 18 and 26. There are also proposed language changes on page 16, which reflects a move from 6 feet apart to as much as feasible. And on page 17, which changes language to when possible. I'm assuming we would strike all that language, and that the only thing that would be up for a vote tonight is to change page 15 to reflect grades 4 and 5 moving to a hybrid schedule beginning on October 5th. Is that correct?
That is correct. I apologize. All of the changes were from page 16 through 26. So all of those would be stricken except for the change on page 15, which reflects the board motion that was at the last board meeting, approved at the last board meeting, And I'll read-
Necessary to add grades 4 and 5 to the hybrid plan.
And grades 6 to 12 moving to a hybrid AB schedule on November 10.
Thank you very
Yep.
much.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Burt. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second. This is Dr. Goetz.
Second by Dr. Goetz. Roll call.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Suiters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christy. We'll move on to citizen comments. The citizen comments section here is only for agenda items. If you want to be recognized, you will use the raise your hand feature. You will then be recognized and you'll state your name and address for the record, and then the board welcomes your comment. Okay, we have a public comment. Susan Spica. Susan, once the meeting host unmute your mic, please state your name and your address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Susan.
All right, so is there an echo with this or not?
No, I hear you pretty clear. Now I lost you. Susan?
Now can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly now. Thank you. Susan?
Yep, I'm not sure what my problems are.
Okay, go ahead.
We're not
All
either.
right, so I would like to thank the board or thank Dr. Seppo for taking this these major changes off the agenda tonight. There's a long-standing and accepted practice for the adoption of new policies that ensures transparency and allows for the public input into the board's decision-making process. So it was really surprising to see these changes, major changes to a policy appear on a Friday night for a vote on a Monday. So typically when the board's going to adopt a new policy, the board president and the superintendent meet. They discuss the policy changes, they finalize the agenda, which the board president and superintendent usually do when I was on the board for 4 years. Every agenda was a product of the board president and the superintendent working together. And then they place it on the board agenda for a first reading. No action is taken on the policy during that meeting. And it gives board members the opportunity to discuss the policy change at a public meeting, to ask the administration questions, and it ensures that the public has an ample opportunity to read the policy and
Susan?
ask questions
Lost you there
and
for-
share their thoughts with board members. So I'm very grateful to Dr. Seppo for taking these changes off the agenda. And I really hope and most strongly urge board members to not remove really critical safety protocols from the school reopening health and safety plan that the board approved. Please don't remove those safety protocols. It would put our students and our faculty at risk. And I have to say, I just want to say tonight, like, our teachers are our greatest asset. They are talented professionals who've dedicated their lives to educating our children. They put in the hours and hours they've needed to put in to be able to provide them with quality remote instruction this fall. Our district cannot function and our students will not learn if our teachers are sick and unable to teach, or if they're put into an unhealthy and unsafe condition in schools and they go on medical leave or they resign because they're not willing to put themselves at that risk. So the public has entrusted this board with the health and safety and education of our children, and I hope that you will, really take that seriously as you make decisions moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Susan. Just to clarify though, the health and safety plan is a plan that is designed to educate our students, required by the Department of Education and the Department of Health. The health and safety plan is a plan. It is not a board policy. Therefore, it does not go under first and second reads like a board policy would. So I just wanted to clarify that. Having seen no other hands raised, Christy, were there any submitted comments?
Yes, we did receive one, and that was from Megan and Matt Lane. And their email reads, I have concerns regarding the upcoming switch to the hybrid model for the older children. My understanding is there will be 3 asynchronous days as opposed to the one we have now. I have a child in 8th grade who struggled with the asynchronous approach in the spring. Even at 1 day a week, she has struggles. I fear whatever progress she has made prior to the hybrid model will be lost. Many of these students benefit from a live person doing the instruction. They will be cutting in half the live person experience with the change to hybrid. As much as the fall has been more organized than the spring for the virtual instruction, it still has unnecessary challenges. There is an overall lack of uniformity amongst the classes with the different apps that are used. This creates confusion and makes it easy for mistakes and oversights to be made. Further, they are inundated with emails, making it easy for things to be missed. Streamlining, simplifying, and having the teachers use the same apps across the board will make this a better and easier experience for them. I am also concerned about the decision to send the children into schools at the start of the regular flu season. It would have made much more sense to start in schools, then move to hybrid/virtual at the start of flu season. I know everyone is anxious to get back to normal and in school, but this is not the best time to start. Thank you. That's the only one I received.
Thank you so much. I think we do have a couple more hands raised. Deborah Reinhardt. Deborah, when your microphone is unmuted, please state your name and your address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, Deborah. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Deborah Reinhardt, live on Shippensburg Borough. I want to second everything that Susan Spica said as far as the middle and the high school. If we're not ready to be able to follow the approved protocols, safety protocols, then I think it's too soon to move into that sector. What I'd like to know is the intermediate school is starting October 5th. Now, from what I understand, what I hear you saying, that school will be able to open and operate under all the current safety protocols. Is that correct?
I believe so. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah, right. The changes to the safety protocols were specifically to address some concerns at the middle school and high school. So what we have in place, we believe will be able to implement at the intermediate building.
Thank you.
You're going to be following all the protocols that were listed there. Okay. Contact tracing and that whole bit, if we have some positives.
Yeah, of course, that would only come into play if we had positive cases.
That's right.
Okay.
But that has to be, you have to plan and have that set up and ready to go with it.
Okay, anything else, Deborah?
I just want to be assured that, okay, if we're not sure about the middle and the high school, are we sure that the intermediate is good to go? Or
I-
are we just,
I
or are
believe-
we just rushing it?
No, I believe that the administration has advised the board that it is, and that's why the board took the action it took.
Okay, that's
The
all.
intermediate building is on schedule to return on the 5th, implementing the health and safety measures that we've implemented previously since the start of the school year with K-3.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to know. But like I said, I don't think we should rush the middle and the high school until we're ready. We shouldn't be changing them to be able to open early. That's all, thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. Allison Carey. Allison, when your microphone is unmuted, please state your name and your address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment.
Hi, I'm Allison Carey, 28 Diller Drive, Shippensburg. My comments are related to the change in the revisions where language gets changed to become very vague, using words like as feasible, we may do something, or occupancy simply below normal. If we make changes to the health and safety reopening plan, I think that parents need to be afforded specific language and guidance so that schools can be held accountable and so that parents can make informed decisions about sending their children back to school or not. So if there are revisions to the plan, I think they need to be much more specific than the ones that are currently proposed. That's it.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate your comments. Anthony Weber. Anthony, when your microphone is unmuted, the board welcomes your comment. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I had earlier this afternoon emailed to the board secretary a letter, and I wanted to see if that was going to be read or if that was something that I can read now.
I apologize, Mr. Weber. I did not see your email. So you are, I'm assuming Mr. Budabal won't mind that you read that now.
I do not.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for your attention and the work you have done over the course of the last 8 months. As we continue to work, plan, and strategize how to best meet the needs of our students, there are many concerns that the Shippensburg Area Education Association members have brought forth. I will not attempt to share all of those as I'm not in every building nor work in every department. Instead, I would like to discuss the manner in which decisions are made and why teachers need to be stakeholders in the decision-making process. Teachers were an integral part of the planning process this summer when the building reopening plan was being changed slightly by the school board. Regardless, the teachers and other faculty members strategized to come up with the best implementation of the plan currently being implemented. Then, just as teachers began to get the slightest bit comfortable with the new look of our education, the board again changed the plan. One of my main concerns is that the plan was made and decided upon by the school board without first asking the people that are working in our schools every day. Those people are the teachers, the assistants, the nurses, counselors, administrators, and many others. Those people haven't been given a voice. The current plan to reopen all buildings to a hybrid model by the end of the marking period is extremely difficult, potentially unsafe, and in some buildings not even feasible. Hopefully this evening you will listen to the professionals in our buildings that are doing the work every day. They will give you the mental picture necessary to make the hard decisions before you. I can tell you now that our teachers and staff are already mentally worn. Each of us is working harder and longer to bring the best possible instruction to our students. This is no more difficult if we keep changing the expectation. I personally am not in favor of one option over the other. I'm also not going to speak on behalf of the association. I will let them speak for themselves. I do, however, ask that when you make decisions in the future, please include all stakeholders in your decision before making the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Anthony. I appreciate it. Becky Wolfinger. Becky, when your microphone is unmuted, please state your name and address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment.
Hi, thank you. Becky Wolfinger, and I live outside on Orrstown Road. So I still have the same kind of concerns that I had the last go around, the last meetings. And now I think my major concerns are with the asynchronous versus the synchronous learning. With the hybrid scheduling, for me and for my children, I can just tell you that it's going to be a step backwards, where my 8th grader is thriving in this environment. Again, my 5th grader is not. So when we go from the all virtual schedule right now to a hybrid schedule, currently she's receiving 4 days of synchronous learning and 1 day of asynchronous learning. Going to the hybrid schedule, that's now being reduced. So I feel like it's a step backwards for our children that really need that one-on-one education. And I'm still waiting on an answer as far as what are the benchmarks that as a community we need to achieve in order to get our kids back to school 5 days a week, in-person learning. I feel like we're planning this literally moment by moment, and there's not a sufficient answer as to what are the benchmarks that we need to hit to get them back into school 5 days. It feels like, we're just kind of piecemealing this together. And we're never going to make any progress if the end is not in sight and we don't have a plan to get us where we're going. I feel like, everything is just kind of, as the wind blows. Like, what are those benchmarks? I would love to finally get that answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Becky. We appreciate that. Okay, seeing no other hands raised, we will move on. I don't think we have any student representatives with us tonight. I didn't hear Sarah or Caden in the roll call. Is that correct, Dr. Seppo? I don't see them here. No.
That is correct.
Okay, so we'll move on to the Franklin County Career Center
Mr.
report.
Butterball,
Yes.
can I stop you? I think I see Sarah Fink with her hand raised.
Okay, hold on. Still learning how to use this thing.
She just made.
There she is.
Yeah, she needed moved over. Thank you. Thanks.
Is she over? Sarah, how you doing? Can you unmute your mic and we welcome your student report?
Hello. So our fall sports are in full swing currently, with the season openers for each sport taking place last week or this week. It's officially homecoming week with a somewhat modified activity schedule. Homecoming court was selected last week, with voting coming soon this week. SASD Student Council is hosting a virtual Spirit Week with themed days like Crazy Sock Day and Flannel Day for students to upload pictures to the Student Council Facebook page to show their participation. There's also a daily trivia question where each student that answers correctly can be placed into a drawing for $50 every day this week. On Saturday, the unveiling of the new Greyhound statue outside of Sasha's took place as a part of the flagship Proud initiative to update the exterior of the school. The first week of Wednesday club meetings was last week, which has helped encourage students to get connected and keep up the participation in all of our school-sponsored activities. And spectators are being allowed into all fall sporting events at limited capacity except for volleyball. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We appreciate it. Move on to board committee reports. I'm not aware of any committee that met. Dr. Suppo, could you clarify, please?
Yeah, the negotiations committee did meet this evening prior to the regular board meeting. While we did not have a formal meeting of the policy committee meeting, we have been, myself along with the policy committee members have been working on updating policy 005 to reflect some of the recommendations that the board had discussed with the district looking at a long-term solution for distance learning. And also the athletics committee has been working with myself and Mr. Montadora regarding athletics and attendance policies, again, or not attendance policies, excuse me, but our attendance during the pandemic. So we have Mr. Monadoro who will be speaking about that in a little while.
Okay, and if board members could let me know by email of their interest, I do want to go ahead and at the next meeting and appoint the online education committee, a new standing committee of the board that will be charged with helping to continue to build our online content and our online curriculum delivery mechanisms. So any board member that has an interest in that, please let me know by email. Hearing no other board finance committee reports, we'll move on to Christy Lentz. Christy, finance report.
Yes, this evening we are going to have Jamie Doyle join us. She is the managing director from PFM, Public Financial Management. We have used this group for a long time. We have a long-standing relationship with PFM. They provide us financial guidance on if we need to refinance a bond or if we need to go out for a new bond, new debt. So she's joining us tonight to discuss with the board a potential refinance of our Series 2013 bond. And with that said, under the discussion agenda item, there is authorization to move forward with PFM to allow them to do a competitive proposal process to look at refinancing the debt. And so I'm asking the board, after you hear the presentation tonight, if there's no questions or concerns, I would recommend that the board move this from the discussion agenda to the action agenda so PFM can get moving sooner rather than later on sending out competitive proposals and locking in a very low interest rate while they remain low. So at this point, I will turn it over to Jamie Doyle.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Doyle from PFM, Independent Financial Advisor to the School District. And I see my presentation is on the screen. Great. If you look at page number 1 of my handout, the lower right-hand corner in particular, if there's any little bit of good news to the challenging situation we all find ourselves in right now, it's the fact that interest rates are at all-time lows. So if you scroll down a little bit more, yep, lower right-hand corner, you can see we had set new all-time lows right before the stay-at-home order back in March, and we're even lower than that right now. So not a great time if you're looking to invest your money, but it is a great time if you're looking to conduct a refinancing such as the one we're about to talk about. If you turn to page number 2, you'll see the district's existing debt portfolio. And even when you don't see me very often, I constantly monitor your debt portfolio for refinancing opportunities. And this is just like refinancings that you've conducted in the past. This is very similar to when you might think about refinancing your home mortgage. We're not proposing to extend the debt at all. We're simply proposing to replace the old higher interest rates on your general obligation bond series of 2013 that you see in column 3, replace those old higher rates with today's lower rates. So as always, the top half of the page is your gross debt service on your various outstanding issues, meaning principal and interest. And the bottom half of the page, if you scroll down a little bit more, is your local share, because you receive state reimbursement on all of your issues except for one. You can see that PE percentage line near the bottom. That's the percentage that the state shares in each of these issues. That gets multiplied by your capital account reimbursement fraction, which is a couple lines below that, to come up with the effective reimbursement. So the bottom half is your local share that actually hits your budget after state reimbursement. So the reason we're focusing on the series of 2013 bonds, you can see they go out and final maturity is in fiscal year ending 2030. And near the bottom of the page, you can see there's a line labeled call date. These bonds have been callable since May 1 of 2018, but they've not worked prior to this. They started to look attractive in March, but then rates, as you saw on my chart, spiked back upward for a time when the stay-at-home order was issued, and they're just starting to look attractive at this point in time. If you look at page number 3, you'll see your 2013 bonds. So if you do nothing, you'll continue to make the payments on page 3, and you can see you're slated to make your final payment on November 1 of 2029. And you can see the interest rates that you currently have locked in column 3 range from a 2% on the short end to a 2.65% on the long end. So pretty low interest rates to begin with, but we can lower them even further through this competitive process. If you look at page number 4, this is how much money we need to pay off those old 2013 bonds, principal and interest, on or about January 11th. That's when I'm assuming for this illustration that settlement would occur. And then page 5 is the important page in this handout. And I'm always conservative this early on in my estimates. So if we were having the sale today, we'd do a little better than this, but you can see conservative estimate in column 3, rates range from a 1.17% to a 1.79% on the long end. The yield curve is still very, very flat. That was the top half of page 1 in that very first chart, meaning the rate's not all that different in 2021 than it is in 2029. But those lower rates are what generate the net savings to the district, illustrated in column 11, of just about $77,000 in the box near the bottom of column 11. If you start at the top of column 11 and work your way downward, you can see the way you would recognize these savings are approximately $36,000 in the current fiscal year, approximately $21,000 next fiscal year, and then a couple hundred to a couple $1,000 each of the remaining years, and you'd still pay off at exactly the same point in time, November 1 of 2029. When I say net savings to the district, you can see in that very bottom box, unfortunately, the state gets the same share of your savings as they pay on your debt service. And so the state's share is already netted out of here, as are estimated costs of issuance based on what you've historically paid. But of course, we'll bid all of those out as we have historically done. I would also point out near the bottom of the page, that gray box that's labeled PV of 1/10 of 1%. So present value of 1/10 of 1%, which, you know, 1/10 of a percent, that sounds like almost nothing, right? But 1/10 of a percent up or down moves your net savings number by almost $30,000. So it's very, very sensitive. And it doesn't take a whole lot to make this opportunity go away, but it also doesn't take a whole lot to make this opportunity even more attractive than what you see here. If you look at the last page of my handout, you'll see a sample motion that would authorize the finance team to proceed and get the paperwork in order. The finance team consists of myself as your independent financial advisor, Eckert Siemens as your bond counsel, and that might be a different legal name than you recall. It used to be Rhodes and Seinen. Rhodes and Seinen closed their doors and Eckert Siemens took on their whole bond department. So it's the same individual that you've always dealt with, Jens Damgaard, but he is working under a new firm name. So I just want to point that out in case Eckert Siemens doesn't sound familiar to you. As well as your local solicitor would be involved, of course, and getting the paperwork in order constitutes a dual track process that we've used on your last couple of refundings, meaning we do a competitive bank loan RFP process. We take the results from the bank loan, evaluate them, you know, boil the results down to true interest cost, and then compare the best bank loan proposal to the bond market, and whichever produces the greatest amount of net savings to the district is what we'll ultimately recommend. You'll notice there is a blank in the sample motion for a minimum net savings target. And as always, this is just a minimum. It's not a maximum. My job as your independent financial advisor is to save you every dollar that I can. And I would just point out that I believe last time you set that minimum at $50,000, meaning if you couldn't save at least $50,000, then it wasn't, you know, worth your while or worth your time to proceed. And so you may want to consider that as a minimum again. If you scroll down just a little bit further, there's a sample timeline. Tonight is an initial presentation to the board. The motion above could be considered if or when you're ready to proceed. And we could be locking interest rates in as early as December 7th with settlement on January 11th, as I mentioned earlier. That's how I've tentatively built the timeline. So I know that's a lot of information, but this opportunity is very similar to other refinancings that the district has undertaken in the past. And we would, utilize the same competitive process that we've utilized in the past. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Do any board members have any questions for Jamie?
This is Dwayne Burt. I have one question, which may be for Christy, but what was this bond series? I don't believe this is the ESCO project. What was it?
So this was a refunding of 2008 and 2008A. And I would have to, and you can see that at the very bottom of page number 2 of my handout. I'd have to go back and look to trace back what the 2008 and 2008A series accomplished. And if you give me a minute, I could do that. Or maybe I can't because I'm seeing your screen. I can't get to mine.
What I have wrote down, a series of 2013, I don't know if you said this, Jamie, was previously series of 2008 and 2008A.
Correct.
And that was, it looks like the 2008 said James Byrd, Nancy Grayson Intermediate School. So I'm assuming those upgrades. And then something that was done to the high school and contingency we used for water heaters at Sam's.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to thank Jamie for her presentation tonight. And if I could get some clarity from Christy, just to, for clarification purposes, you would like to move 4F to the action agenda?
That is correct. And then the other thing is what Jamie had pointed out, which I put in the minimum savings target that she showed in the presentation this evening, but the board may want to lower that just in case we don't hit that target of like 76,000. So it's up to the board what number they want to put in there as a minimum savings target.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll address that at that point. Jamie, thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Okay, we'll move on to we're booting the curriculum report for 2 weeks, and the Shippensburg Community Resource Coalition Blues presentation we're going to move to 2 weeks. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Suppo for district update.
Thank you, Mr. Butterbach. We had, earlier Sarah had mentioned about the attendance at athletic events. So what I'd like to do is call Mr. Montadoro online at this point so he can talk a little bit about some of the work we've done and discussions we've had with the athletic committee.
Good evening, everyone. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this. As you know, as we make decisions at 10 o'clock in the morning, by noon, things have changed, and by 2 o'clock, they've changed again. So we're just going with what we know at the time when we do things. The policy that we came up with, the spectator policy, was because of the governor's mandates on attendance. Also, we'd gotten information from the PIAA and the Department of Education asking us to continue with the 250 for outdoor events and 25 for indoor events. Due to those restrictions, our attendance would have been, for boys and girls soccer, we were recommending that each athlete given 2 season vouchers so they can be used at each home game, and we would have no visiting spectators. For high school and middle school field hockey, each athlete will be given 2 family members. We'll have 2 family members attend each home game. Again, no visiting spectators. Cross country, each athlete will be permitted to have 2 family members attend each home race, but no spectators will be permitted at the start-finish line, and no visiting spectators. For varsity football, we are recommending each senior athlete given 2 season vouchers that can be used at all home games. Each junior athlete will be given 1 voucher to be used at all home games. And again, no visiting spectators will be admitted so that we could adhere to the 250 number. JV and freshman football, each athlete given 2 season vouchers and no visiting spectators. For our varsity cheerleaders, we are going to go with each senior athlete 2 season vouchers, and each junior athlete will be given 1 season voucher for all home games. Cheerleaders will not be traveling this year. Middle school cheer, each athlete will be given 2 season vouchers to go to all home games. And volleyball, because of the numbers, we were not going to be able to do much with, but we would like to at least have each athlete given 2 season vouchers that can be used for their parents to attend with no visiting spectators. Again, that was the recommendation. And then at the bottom, we would still be requesting all spectators to wear masks when inside the facilities. If there's a medical reason they can't wear a mask, then we would want documentation. And then when inside the stadium or field hockey or soccer, to try to maintain the social distance of 6 feet from other fans. If there are multiple games, like for example, if we have a JV contest followed by varsity, we would be asking those JV parents and spectators to leave before the varsity game starts, and vice versa on that. So that's where we were a week ago, kind of coming into it. And I know there's been some discussion. I've had some discussion with some board members tonight, looking at some different numbers. I was asked to get some numbers on a 50% capacity for outdoors and a 30% capacity for indoors. I can tell you the numbers on a 50% capacity at the stadium at the park would be about 800 total people, at about 800 at the park. And then for indoors, a 30% capacity would be about 300 total people in the gymnasium. So those numbers I was asked to present, so I've given those numbers as well.
Okay, this is Fred Scott. We can talk now?
If you got some questions for Mike, go ahead.
Yep,
All right.
go ahead, Fred.
When you say, is that including the football team in those numbers?
In the 800,
Yes.
if we went 50% capacity, yes, I included those numbers in capacity at the stadium.
All right. What about, I just want to know specifically the stands, the big concrete stands and the metal for the visitor. How many can the concrete stands hold?
The concrete stands for the home side. Is that what you're asking, Mr.
Yes.
Scott?
Yes, the home side.
The home side stand hold about 1,300.
Okay. So if we split that in half, six something on for the home team, right?
If you went in half, you'd be about 650.
Okay. And then on the visitor side, how many it holds?
On the visitor side, it holds about 420 people. So if we cut that in half, we'd be right around that 200, 210 mark.
Okay. How many people do you know? How many tickets do you normally sell a football game?
Well, I don't.
That's just an estimate.
I don't have that sheet in front of me right now. I would say on an average Friday night, we're probably we probably sell about we're probably under 1,000 on an average night.
Okay. So I don't see why the football teams are included in this amount. They're sitting down there and they're not nearing spectators. So, and the other people that were doing the game are all down the hole, a lot further from the stands. So I'd like to see 50% of the stands considered of the concrete and the visitors. 50%. I think that's still well below the number we normally get. And the students in the band included, are not included in that number. Because most of the people stand around the fence. A lot of people stand around the fencing anyway. They don't sit up in the bleachers. So I'd like to see that number higher.
Okay, thanks, Fred. Now, I have a couple questions here. First, the federal judge that has invalidated Governor Wolf's restrictions kind of throws out all this 250-25 stuff. So Mike, given the fact that those restrictions aren't really requirements anymore, where does the PIAA stand on all this?
We got an email from the PIAA about 2 weeks ago that just said, they recommended that we stayed with the 250 and 25, and then we got the Department of Health and that also asked that we voluntarily follow 250 and 25.
Mike, do you have any sense of what other districts are doing?
Again, as I said, things change by the minute. I feel like every district is trying to make an effort to do something with volleyball because they're really, with 25 inside the gym, you can't even put volleyball teams in there, and it's, again, the parents can't see it at all. So that's one thing where a lot of schools are making those adjustments. But I would say, like, over the last day or two, other schools are starting to open up their facilities a little bit more. Often just opened some stuff up today. Just gave us some numbers this afternoon with some things that they're doing. Again, I think as we look at numbers or kind of open it up, we're still going to have a couple of issues that we will have to, kind of hash out. And that's selling tickets, or are we going to sell at the gate? And do I have people that are willing, to trade cash and sell tickets and work with the public that way? So we'll have some hurdles to get through, but I think, I think we could expand on a little bit of everything.
Okay, I know when I talked to Attorney Repack, our solicitor today, I don't know how many school districts they represent, but a fair amount. And he did advise that most of them are doing a 50-30 split. So I think that's probably where that came from. Does any other board member have any questions for Mike and what he presented?
I have one.
Go ahead, Fred. Go ahead, Fred.
Hey, Mike, didn't the PIAA say they were going to leave it up to the school boards for each school to determine the amount of students for each event?
Yeah, at some point, as these things come down, then it became a just localized decision making. So leaving it up to school boards on what those numbers should be.
Okay, and for me, I think the parents and even the parents of the visitors, it can be accommodated. I'd like that to be done. They don't have to all be in there, but at least like the seniors.
I got a question. We're talking 50%. Let's say we had 680 on the visitor on the home side and 210 on the visitor side. We're at what, 6, 7, 8? We're almost at 900 people right there. That's getting real close to what you normally sell on a normal Friday night, even without the COVID, correct?
Yeah, it is pretty close. I mean, obviously
it's a little less, but
it's a little less, and our bleachers and things look more crowded because we have 150 kids in the band that are in the bleachers, and
right.
And so as you start, and the other side has a band and the visitor side, so you bunching everybody together. So even though it doesn't seem like a lot, when you put everybody in the bleachers, it gets pretty crowded quickly.
Well, and I understand that, but I think a lot of that might be, I guess, again, if we set whatever tonight, if people are afraid to come, they just ain't going to come. They're going to watch it on the computer or whatever they advertise on Penn broadcasting thing or whatever it is. So, I mean, you just got to use common sense. If you're wearing masks, I really think you're going to have people that ain't going to come. So I don't think that number is going to, I don't think you're even going to hit that number. If we allow 50%, because I think you're going to still have the people who want to go just stay at home and watch it on Mid-Penn broadcasting. And that way they don't have to worry about
it. Mr. Burt?
Yes, this is Dwayne Burt. Thank you. I guess the first question I have goes back to volleyball. Is that the sport as of today, let's say, that isn't allowed any spectators at all? And is that the only sport? And then from there, I guess this new plan that Mike, that you presented does fix that. It gives the volleyball players two tickets each. Is that correct?
That is correct. As of today, volleyball is the one sport that doesn't allow spectators. And we are saying in this recommendation, at least to allow 2 parents in.
Good. I'm glad to see that move. Certainly in our gym, we could certainly handle, I would think, a volleyball team, the visitor team, and 2 parents. So I'm glad to at least see that step. Now you also mentioned band. Does that mean that the band is practicing, and or that they would be in the stands for the home games?
I can't answer that question because I don't think the band has been practicing. I only reference the band to say that, when we sell 800 tickets, it looks like it's crowded because all of those things are also in the bleachers.
And then a follow-up, if the band isn't practicing and isn't playing, I wonder why not. And then are there any other unique areas like volleyball or band, or you mentioned cheerleaders, or any other areas that we haven't mentioned that need to be ferreted out, where the students need to be allowed to participate or should be allowed to participate, and the parents allowed to to get a part of the joy that comes from seeing their child participate. Thank you.
And Mr. Burt, I think Mrs. Luffy's on hand too, so we could have her talk a little bit about band.
Hi, Dr. Suppo. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. But yes, the band has been practicing by doing sectionals during our virtual learning. I would say that, we wouldn't expect a field show because we did not have marching band camp this summer due to some of the restrictions. But I'm sure that Mr. Mag and all of the band would be more than eager to get some of the fight songs and some of the traditional songs that we played during the football games ready to go so that we could at least participate. I wouldn't expect, though, a show because we haven't practiced or we haven't prepared a show like that. That is typical.
Personally, thank you very much. Personally, I would like to entertain more discussion on that and to allow them to do just that.
This is Fred Scott. Mike, on the volleyball, is that with no visiting inspector? Are you included? No visitors allowed? Is that what you're saying? Or the other team will have tickets too?
As of right now, if we're sticking to if we're trying to stick to that 25 number, we would say only home spectators.
Forget the 25, that's done.
All right. So if you're telling me that we can do a little bit more, then we could probably look at some visiting spectators as well.
That's what I'm looking at. Parents to parents, I don't care if visitor here. I'm for letting them see their child play. Thank you.
Yeah, Mike and I have talked about that. We really didn't, to be honest with you, we really didn't see that would be a big issue with volleyball. Yeah, I think that might be something that gets to be a greater concern when we move into, the winter season. But right now, for the fall season, with volleyball and allowing visiting parents, I don't see that as an issue.
And they have a game tomorrow night, correct?
That is correct.
So the parents will be able to come.
Depending on the final recommendation of the board tonight, yes.
Well, I guess that's where I'm at as the board president, is trying to decide what do you need, Chris? Do you need a motion to approve what Michael has put forth? Do you need a board motion on something else? What do you need here?
Right. So we've heard a couple of things. Of course, Mike talked about some things we've been discussing over the last couple of weeks. As he indicated, the information keeps changing. More recently, I think discussions with the board and other districts, understanding that they're starting to open them up a little bit more than even what we had initially talked about with just allowing senior parents in. So if the board, if someone would entertain a motion, either to recommend Mike's plan. Well, I hate to call it Mike's plan. Forgive me. The committee's plan that the committee has discussed about over the last couple of weeks, or again, a little bit more of an aggressive approach with, I've heard some recommendations of anywhere from 50% to 30% or anywhere in between.
What does our gym hold for the volleyball games? What's this seating capacity there?
Our seating capacity in the gym is it's like 1,002.
Okay. That's just on the bleachers, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then I would recommend that we go 50% there, which would give us 500, and 50% at the park is probably going to be like 1,000, because I think the park holds like 2,400. But I would round it off to 1,000.
Fred Scott seconds that.
This is, I'm not sure if that was a motion or not.
Hold on a second. Charlie, are you making a motion?
Yes, I'm making a motion
Okay, restate your motion, please.
that 50% in the gym, which would be like 500 if it holds 1,000, and the same at the park, but I will round it off to 2,000. And I said, make it 1,000 there, at 50%.
Okay, so your motion is 50% in indoors and 50% outdoors.
Correct.
And Mr. Scott, is that a second to your, are you seconding that motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, now, board discussion. Dr. Goetz is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Montadoro, I just want to be clear that you are saying that the Department of Health is recommending that districts voluntarily maintain the 250 gathering for 250 gathering size for outside events and 25 for inside events. Is that correct?
The last communication we received from them, that was, they were asking us to voluntarily agree to that.
All right, so earlier, thank you. Earlier, we had a comment from a citizen that was asking about what the benchmark was for us returning to full, face-to-face 5 days a week education. And I'm sorry that that hasn't been made clear to her, because I think that we've tried to make that pretty clear, that we can't even consider getting there until we reach 10 positive case, below 10 positive cases per 100,000 residents in our area. We're presently in this sort of slow burn, phase. For the past 3 months in Cumberland and Franklin counties, we've oscillated between 20 and 50 cases per 100,000, and we're not trending either direction. But if you'll excuse the metaphor, I think we're really taking our eye off the ball here. If our goal is to get kids back into school and to minimize any potential negative consequences of holding school on the community in regards to the spread of this virus, then I don't know how we go against the Pennsylvania Department of Health recommendations for size gatherings. I mean, that's just absurd. I mean, we got to think about what's most important. And I love sports and I love the kids playing sports. I think that is super important, but I am not willing to jeopardize the possibility of bringing our kids back to school for the sake of some larger gatherings at sporting events in our schools or at the park. I mean, I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. So I could potentially live with this first recommendation that the committee presented, but talking about 50% capacity at the outdoor stadium and 30% capacity indoors, I mean, that's just an absurdity. I can't even believe that that's part of this conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Goetz. Any other comments from board members?
So I would I would essentially second what Dr. Goetz is saying. I can live with the original recommendation, even letting the volleyball players have their parents in the building. I love volleyball. My wife played volleyball at D1 school, so I'm all about sports, but I especially think letting visiting spectators in that's just a recipe that's irresponsible. That's a recipe for creating super spreaders for super spreader events for every sports activity that we have in the district. It's just not responsible to have people traveling all over the central Pennsylvania and spreading germs. It just doesn't make sense. I'm happy to have parents in the buildings or happy to have parents in the stadiums, especially if it's outside. That seems pretty safe, but more than what this Department of Health is recommending just doesn't seem smart. Thousands of people in our football stadium and in our gym yelling and spreading all whatever is coming out of their mouths on everybody else just does not sound smart to me.
Any other comments?
Yeah, if we do, and whatever we vote for, they're gonna wear masks all the time, whether it's indoor, outdoor, whatever?
That's our,
All district facilities would require the use of masks.
Any other comments or questions on the motion on the floor?
If I could add my 2 cents worth in with regard to the indoor, I do understand the desire to have people watch our teams. I think our students certainly miss that, and I'm a bit more flexible when we start talking about outdoor activities. But I will say, the gymnasium at 50%, that really concerns me. I think that's just a pretty high number for us to be inside. So I would like the board to consider that. Again, it's not that I don't want people in to see our kids. I do, but that's a pretty high number.
Hey, Doc, how many people come to the volleyball game?
I think Mike would tell you probably on a really good day, you're probably around 150, Mike. What would you say?
yeah, we probably will not hit 150. We definitely wouldn't get the 200 on a volleyball night.
And we're talking about the high school, right?
Yes, sir.
Could we not designate one section for the visitors? That's their section and the other, and we can't spread 100 people off in the other 3 sections of the gym? I don't understand. That's a big gym with probably people, you probably 100 some people. I don't see where the issue's at.
I mean,
when basketball comes, I have no problem with basketball. That basketball will be a pain. I understand that, but for 100 people in volleyball?
Yeah, Mr. Scott, and actually that brings up a very good point, because I'm kind of thinking down the road. So really, I am thinking beyond volleyball. I am thinking about winter sports when I really concerned about the number of people that
And I understand that, but I'm not ready to cross that bridge yet. I got enough problem with dealing with volleyball and football before I'm worried about basketball.
But if we set a bad precedent now with the indoor sports, when basketball comes along, people are going to expect full gyms, and that's, again, irresponsible.
What they expect and what they get is 2 different things. That's why we're bored. We vote for things. Nothing is automatic.
So this is Dr. Goetz. If I could just chime in one more time. I mean, you can imagine, 150 people spread out, throughout the stadium, sitting in twos, in pairs or something like that. And that might seem reasonable, but when you have 100 people coming into a room, they don't space out when they're coming in and when they're leaving. Like when you have an event that size, people congregate. It just happens, and you can't control it. I don't know. I think it's super irresponsible for us to just say, well, because of legal reasons, the governor's order opens up these possibilities, and then to simply ignore the public health professionals guidelines that they've been giving us. I mean, we've all said before, like, we're not the experts, and we're looking for, you know, guidance by those with expertise. Well, they're giving us the guidance, and if we ignore it, I mean, that's on us. And I'm just simply not willing to ignore the guidance of state public health professionals.
But didn't the professionals say that a casual thing is not so how the disease is communicated, that it has to be some constant thing? I thought that's already been rectified, that it has to be a constant, at least 10 to 15 minutes of contact. That came from Dr. Fauci, unless I'm mistaken. A casual contact will not give you disease.
So
Well,
this is Dr.
I don't-
Lyman. Just a volleyball game is an hour and a half long. That's a long time to be in the same room with a whole bunch of people breathing and yelling and screaming with whatever kind of ventilation is happening in that gym. It's a very long time.
And just to clarify for my purposes, the motion, if I'm understanding it correctly, is not 30% indoors, but 50% indoors? Is that accurate?
The motion on the floor was 50% outdoor and indoor, correct?
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
Mr. President, this is Dwayne Burt. As much as I'd like to, as much as I wish that I thought we were in a position to move forward like this, I just don't believe we are. I'd like to dovetail onto some comments that Dr. Goetz made. We have put forward a phased-in approach to try to give people choice in the schools for which delivery they want, if they want a virtual delivery or if they want a face-to-face. And the way that we can do that today, socially distanced, is through the hybrid approach that we're taking. We've taken a phased-in approach, and the one word that perhaps we haven't really mentioned is not to just reopen, but to stay open. And so the continued march forward, to the extent possible, to give families choice to integrate the students back into the classroom on a hybrid model, which is socially distanced, but to remain that way, to stay open, not just to open, but to stay open, I believe is critical. And I believe that is a big part of the goal. Again, to dovetail with Dr. Gott's comments. And therefore, I simply could not support this at this time as much as I'd like to. However, it is very important to me that we address the things that I think are all but forgotten. For example, volleyball. And I believe that the presentation we heard does address volleyball. It allows parents to come now. We have a big gym, and it would allow parents to come, as well as I'd like to see the band and any other, if there are any other of these extracurricular activities that are, I'd like to see those addressed as a part of this, and see the band playing music in the stands during these football games. Thank you.
Okay, and the band is not part of this motion. So, Dr. Suppo, what is the plan for the band, and how can we get this activity active again? I mean, these kids work hard at that band. They make tremendous music. It's a big part of their life, just as every single person on this sports team. And they need to be doing some things this year too. So can you just clarify what the role of the band is going to be this year and how we can keep these kids active?
Yeah, so Mrs. Luffy and I have been talking about that. What we want to do is, we certainly agree, we want to make students in every extracurricular feel that they have a place and have, some sense of the school year and accomplishment. So what Mrs. Luffy was saying earlier, the band is practicing in sectionals, but the marching band itself has not been due to social distancing concerns. But we would like to see that the band get involved in some way with the high school sports and particularly with the football season. We have a short window this year for the football games, but even if they can't do a formal show, we'll call it halftime show, I still do believe that they could play music at the halftime. And so it wouldn't necessarily have to be, a formal display or show that we see is typically produced each year. So I think there are ways to do it. Pep band has been another idea that we've talked about with the outdoor activities, particularly football. So we'll hopefully get something together. We'll be speaking with Mr. Mag.
Okay, and I don't want to delay this anymore, but I do want you to consider something, Chris. We talk about we can't have a show down on the field, but we can play music in the stands. That doesn't make any sense to me. Most of the time when they're down on the field doing a show, they're actually further apart than they are in the stands. So I think that I think that you need to take a complete look at that, because it seems contradictory to me that they can sit next to each other in stands and blow instruments, but we can't have a show on the field where they're marching and more spaced out. It just doesn't make sense.
Now, let me just to clarify, when we say about can't have a show, what we mean is that each year they produce specific formations that the kids move in and practice and rehearse that for a considerable amount of time to accomplish that. So when we say they can't have a show, that's what we're talking about, that piece of it, the formations.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Yes.
This is Dr. Lyman. What Ms. Luffy was saying earlier is that they haven't been able to practice. So it's not that they're not able, they didn't have the opportunity to prepare a show. There is no show.
Right.
Any other questions regarding the motion on the floor? Okay, hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, no.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, no.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, no.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, no.
Mr. Fred Scott, Mr. Fred Scott, did we lose Mr. Scott?
I don't see him on the participant list anymore. So we may have lost him, Christy. So move on.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
No.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters, Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, no.
Motion failed. 6 noes.
Thank you. Is there any further motions on the athletics?
I don't have any other motion, but so we're going to keep volleyball at 25 in the gym. That's okay with everybody.
But this is Dr. Lyman. Did we need a motion to approve Mr. Montadoro's plan that he proposed? Don't we need to?
That's why I asked if there was a motion on the floor.
Yes, we need a motion.
So I would move to approve the plan as proposed by Mr. Montadoro.
Okay, a motion made by Dr. Lyman to approve the plan presented tonight by Mr. Montadoro. Is there a second to the motion?
Dwayne Burt, second.
Second made by Mr. Burt, and discussion from the board. I have a quick question. Mike, again, I just want you to repeat because it's been a stickler all day and the past couple of days. This does address volleyball being permitted to have season vouchers for parents at each home game. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's 2 tickets per participant
Per athlete.
for home games, yes.
Yes.
And that's basically, this is Dr. Lyman, that's basically across all sports, right?
Yes, sir.
That seems
just,
fair.
Hey, Mark.
just one more clarifying.
Hold on 1 second here. Hold on 1 second. There are too many people. Dr. Lyman still has the floor.
No, I'm done.
Okay, well, Dr. Lyman asked the question if that was the same in all sports. I would say yes to that, except for varsity football. We're only given 2 tickets to seniors and 1 ticket to juniors. So we could, we could give 2 tickets. I'm not saying to beef up our attendance, but it could, it could go that way if you want to go 2 for every athlete, but that's okay.
I think we stick to your original proposal. It's fine.
Jim Bard, I think I heard that you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, Fred just called me. He lost Wi-Fi at his house. I got him on the phone here. He not that it matters, but he was a yes on that last vote.
Mr. Scott, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You were a yes vote?
Well, what? This one now?
No, the
No,
first
the
one.
one prior.
Yes.
Okay, Christy, please record that in the minutes. And we'll move on to additional discussion regarding Mr. Montadoro's proposal.
What was that again? How many are we allowing in the gym?
Mike?
For volleyball, it would be the athletes and 2 season vouchers for each parent.
So we're not going with the 30%?
So it's essentially what's on the screen, right here.
Yes.
Correct.
So a number of parents and students in there, on a volleyball game?
Say that again, Charlie.
How many people are going to be in the gym at one time?
So this is Dr. Lyman. I mean, there's about 20 girls on a volleyball team. So times 2, plus the occasional manager and coaches and refs. And so, I don't know, 50,
60.
50, 60 in the whole gym. Okay. That's what I understand.
This is Dr. Goetz. Just one clarifying question. What events do the cheerleaders attend?
Currently, the cheerleaders will attend varsity football and middle school football games.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, I assume since basketball is a little bit later, you're going to be coming back with different recommendations at that point based upon the conditions in the community?
Yeah, yes, I'm guessing that I may be coming back next week with different conditions.
Okay.
I believe that's going to happen. We currently we don't even know what that winter season is going to look like. We just started playing this week, so a lot of things are going to change between now and Thanksgiving.
I don't know if Dr. Lyman's motion has a second, but if it doesn't, I will second it.
I believe it did. It was Mr. Burt. Is there any further discussion regarding this proposal for athletics?
Yeah, if the things doesn't change between now and basketball season, I guess there will be no basketball season. With the numbers that I like that, they wouldn't be able to play at all, would they?
Well, you know, we're doing the same. What we're doing with volleyball is we're only allowing one team in, and what I mean is JV varsity. So the JV teams are in the gym, varsity teams are not, and varsity teams come in, and JV teams have to go out of the gym. So basketball, you're kind of looking at the same thing. You figure there's going to be about 15 on each team. That gives you about 30. You have 3 officials, 33. 2 people at the scorer's table gives you 35. If you let 2 parents for each kid, that gives you another 30 on the home side. So you could pull it off with about 60.
I would like to see at least, if the JV football team don't dress out, that we could get each one of the participants that are playing football of 2 tickets for mother and dad to be there. That's where, I mean, I just think mom and dad should be there. I understand, okay, you're saying 800 is too many, and I understand that, but I just think that if we're not going to allow visitors in there, let's get if you got a sophomore that's a starter on the football team, let's get their mom and dad there. And, you know, the same way with the cheerleaders and what have you. I think mom and dad should at least be there. That's just my opinion. I don't know what that would amount to as far as people, but I can't imagine the park can accommodate that.
This is Dr.
Players do
Lyman.
we have total for football? What varsity?
Yeah, right now our varsity roster, just if you take our varsity JV combined, but right now we have 46 kids on the roster. So if you take 2 tickets times 46, that gives you 92 tickets. 92 people in the stands.
So I would be willing to amend my motion to allow for 2 tickets per athlete in every sport across sports.
I agree. Mr. Burt, do you agree to the amendment to the original motion?
Dwayne Burt, I agree.
Okay, any further discussion? And let me clarify, the motion is as presented by Mr. Montadoro with an amendment that each athlete will get 2 vouchers for parents, no matter what sport.
Just a question to go along with this. This is about the games actually being played. What impact does that have on the practices indoors?
It would have no impact on practices.
So what numbers are we following for practices?
We don't have 25 for volleyball, including coaches. So our practice numbers are not above 25.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred, did you hear him?
Yeah. I'm going to lose, so I'm going to say no. I'm saying no.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
No.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Dr. Suppo, is that it for your report?
That concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Are you sure? All right. We'll move on to the discussion agenda. 4A, agreement with Alyth Counseling Services. B, contract for River Rock Academy, slots for elementary. C was moved to the October agenda. D, a request to purchase bottle fillers. E, request for increasing part-time positions to full-time. And F will be moved to the action agenda. So the items that I just read off are moved over to the agenda. These are for discussion purposes only. If everybody has any comments regarding any of these items, feel free to ask it now or get your questions and concerns to the administration as they will appear on the next agenda under the action agenda. Is there any discussion regarding any of these items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. 5A is the approval of minutes from the September 14th meeting. 5B are your finance reports. 5C is your personnel, professional staff. The administration is recommending the acceptance of a resignation for purposes of retirement of Laura Gamble, a learning support teacher at the middle school. The administration is recommending approval of the following appointment: Clint Shipley, grade 8 science teacher at the middle school, effective November 20th, 2020. Administration is recommending approval of the following salary advancements: Kyle Meitzel and Amanda Riggleman. Support staff, administration is recommending acceptance of the following school security resignations: Paul Bender, Judy Kale, William Mancanier. Administration is recommending employing the individuals below: Shannon Keach, health room assistant, part-time at the intermediate middle schools; Angela Landy, LPN, full-time at the intermediate school, retroactive to September 24th. D is the food service fund debt. E is the contract with Chambersburg Area School District for autism support services. And F is the trails agreement with Yellow Breaches Educational Center. Would any member like to take any of those items in the consent agenda separate? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Dwayne Burt, so moved.
Mr. Burt motions to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second by
Second
Lyman.
by Dr. Lyman. Roll call.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
You get that?
I didn't hear that.
Fred Scott said yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gina Torre, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Tim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Suiters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
We'll move on to the action agenda. 6A is a student expulsion, case number 2020-2021-1. Student waived their rights to a formal student disciplinary hearing before the school board. The administration is recommending excluding the student and be placed at the River Rock Academy for a period of 45 days. Is there a motion to approve 6A?
Charlie Suiters, move to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Suiters. Is there a second?
Fred
Second
Scott,
by
yes.
Mr. Scott. Discussion? Roll call.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes for Fred Scott.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gina Torre, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Suiters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. 6B is the revisions to the school reopening health and safety plan. It was modified to include revisions to page 15, The rest of the revisions were deleted. So this is essentially revising the health and safety plan for the return to school in a hybrid situation for grades 4 to 5 across the district. Is there a motion to approve 6B as amended earlier in the meeting?
Nathan Goetz, so moved.
Dr. Goetz motions to approve 6B as amended. Is there a second to the motion?
Dwayne Burt, second.
Second by Mr. Burt. Discussion from the board. Roll call.
Dwayne Burt, just a clarification, that there are two changes on page 15. They include the addition of grades 4 and 5 to hybrid, as well as grades 6 through 12 to hybrid on November 10th. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's consistent with the motion from the last board meeting.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Suiters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, the final part of the action agenda, and it will need two motions. I mean, it would mean two separate votes. Under the discussion agenda was the authorization for refinancing the series of 2013. The first motion I would need is to move that item from the discussion agenda to the action agenda for a vote. Is there any motion to move 4F to the action agenda?
Dwayne Burt, so moved.
Moved by Mr. Burt. Is there a second on the motion?
Gino Torrey, second.
Dr. Torrey, seconds. Discussion? Roll call.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott, Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Suiters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion
Now,
carried.
in order to take the motion, again, we have a minimum net savings target of $76,000, meaning I'm assuming that means that if the net savings is less than 76, then this doesn't go forward. Is the board okay with that number, or does the board, would somebody like to motion to approve with a different figure?
Dwayne Burt, move approval as written, 76,000.
Mr. Burt motions to approve the authorization for refinancing the series of 2013 as written. Is there a second to the motion?
Michael Lyman, second.
Dr. Lyman seconds. Discussion from the board. Roll call.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Suiters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christy. We'll move on to board comments. I'm going to try to go in order here, but it does jump around. So if I forget you, please let me know. First up will be Dr. Torrey.
No comments tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Burt,
Dwayne Burt, no comments tonight.
Mr. Bard,
I just want to say I'm glad at least we got some more, the parents allowed to come watch the students play. I mean, it's just, I think that's a very important, to have them there, and I'm glad we got that going. So, other than that, no more.
Mrs. Byrd.
I attended the unveiling of the Greyhound at the high school. It was a fabulous ceremony, and I thank everyone who worked very hard on that. Thank you.
Dr. Lyman.
Just because I think it needs to be said almost every board meeting, just a huge thank you to the administration and the teachers who are trying to plow through this very rough time. I know we've heard from a lot of them, and we recognize that this is difficult, and please bear with us.
Dr. Goetz.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple of things if you'll stick with me here. I want to echo Dr. Lyman's comments of appreciation for both the faculty and administration and whoever else is employed by the district. I've tried to talk to as many people as I can, and I've tried to visit a couple of schools and just sort of see what's happening. And plus, I sit in the background in my son's online classes, and I sort of hear what's going on, and I watch all of that, and I'm just super impressed with the effort that all of the teachers are putting into this work. I know this isn't anyone's first choice, but what I've seen and the feedback that I've been getting, I mean, just tons of positive feedback. I'm just really appreciative of all the work. I know it's got to be so much more work than anyone expected to be doing, and I just want them to know that I'm very thankful for the work that they're doing, and I think they're doing a super great job. My other comment is just related. I mentioned this briefly before, but one of the I think it was Becky Wolfinger, I hope I'm saying that name right, that in her early comments asked for a benchmark for when we are going back to full face-to-face. And while I can't speak for the entire board, I've tried to make it very clear at least what my position is, and I think that the position is laid out in the health and safety plan too, that we cannot even consider going back to a normal 5-day-a-week face-to-face until we get below the 10 cases per 100,000 residents. And I think that we have to be there for at least 3 weeks at that spot. I might be wrong about that 3 weeks period, but it's like more than 1 week. You need to be there for a little while before we can even consider it. That's the recommendation we've been given from the Department of Health, and that's what we've approved in the health and safety plan. And once we get there, then I am definitely open to conversations about going back to school in a sort of regular 5-day-a-week kind of plan. But until, and so that's the trigger point for me. We can't even have that conversation until we get below that 10 cases per 100,000, or until we're given some other kind of guidance or some other sort of information by which to make decisions. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Suiters.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay. I just want to again apologize.
Got something.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Fred.
All right, we haven't, every time we have this virtual, come in person, we have trouble with the speakers. I thought that Joe, the head maintenance man, he told me this once before. He said the system we have now is not equipped to do what we wanted to do. It is made up for performances at the auditorium. To correct this problem, he has to purchase new equipment. So either we purchase new equipment or we stay virtual. Someone needs to make that decision here rather quickly, exactly, because we can't be going through this starting and stopping stuff. But that's what he told me tonight. He told me that before, that the system we have in present is not equipped to do what we wanted to do. That's all.
Thanks, Fred. Again, I'd like to apologize to the public tonight for the beginning of this meeting. I do not plan to call this board back face to face until I have assurances from the administration that we have a working system. I certainly hope your comments, Fred, are not accurate. I was under the assumption that we did purchase equipment specifically to have the board meetings at the high school auditorium. Now, if we're talking about purchasing equipment to stream, well, I would suggest that the administration really consider doing that, because I would like to see board meetings, no matter pandemic or no pandemic, continue to be streamed, because I am downright impressed with the amount of people who are watching these board meetings on YouTube, watching these meetings on Zoom, because they have a keen interest in this school district. Their kids go to school here, and they shouldn't have to come out of their home and come to a board meeting to understand what we are doing in a public meeting. So, you know, if we don't have the streaming equipment, then we need to get the streaming equipment, because in my opinion, that should be here for good. Second, I would like to thank the members of the public who have expressed their opinions all week via emails to all of us board members. I have tried to respond to every single one, just to let each person know that I got their email, I've read it, and I understood what they were saying. And I think that's important, because there's some really important issues going on here, and it's very, very difficult with the pandemic. I know there's been some discussion on social media about this board ramming things through. I don't understand that. And I really didn't look at the threads myself. I do not look at Shippensburg community threads anymore. Not after there were several threads attacking board members who volunteer their time. And every single one of us volunteer hours a week to do this. And I'm not putting up with that. So I do know there were some comments on those threads in that Facebook that I do not view asking my comment on something. I apologize I didn't respond. I just don't go into that anymore. But thank you to the public. And then last, I want to echo Dr. Lyman and Dr. Goetz. Thank you to our teachers. Listen, I wish we could say we get it and we mean it, but we don't mean it, because we're not in the classroom trying to pull this off. But you got our respect, you got our ear, and we want to work hand in hand to try to get through this pandemic the best we can, with delivering the best student education that we can. And finally, thanks to the administration, and thank you to my fellow board members for everything that you do, and for the healthy discussion that we had here tonight. You know, whether we win votes or we lose votes, it's the discussion that really matters. So thank you, everybody, and I appreciate that. We'll now move on to the last section, which is public comment. This public comment section is for any other item not listed on the agenda. If you wish to be recognized through Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. I will recognize you, state your name and address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment. Okay, seeing none, information date savers, the upcoming board meeting is slated for October 12th. I can assure you that this will be a virtual board meeting. We will not be in person at that point due to technical issues within the district. The board meeting after that is October 26th, and then we have a board meeting on November 9th and December 7th. And again, it is my intention to hold those virtually, and if we get the technology worked out, we will announce that at another board meeting. Having nothing else on the agenda, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Or does everybody want to stay on?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Dr. Lyman.
Okay, thank you, everybody.